Hey cats, it's Ed, Midsole Bud here, back once again with one of my special long run videos. I'm currently training for the Manchester Half Marathon in October, and within my current shoe rotation for those longer runs and recovery efforts, I've been using the ADIDAS PRIME X 2.0 Strung. Now, I had some preconceptions about this shoe and its performance so far against the original version. I didn't think it was going to perform as well due to that extra weight, but when I dug into some of the data, that wasn't the case. How did this one hold up on a 12-mile steady effort? Let's find out. Thanks for joining me on the channel. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do, it's free of charge. Also give this video a thumbs up like, it really helps to get the video out to more runners. Danke schön. Humid conditions out there at the moment in the UK. We did have a little rain, but the 19°C temps with high humidity aren't the best running conditions at the moment. I got out there nice and early on the Sunday morning. 12-mile effort, that's 19.3 kilometers, 1 hour 37 moving time. A good, solid, easy to steady effort building up ready for Manchester in October. 169 steps per minute cadence average with a heart rate average of 133 beats per minute. 96% of the run within my moderate heart rate zone. There's been a bit of discussion on my Strava recently about sort of effort levels and heart rate zones and things like that. I was kind of running, easy pace, sort of sustainable, sort of steady pace, I suppose. And Strava reckons that pretty much the whole run was in that moderate heart rate zone. It's like endurance pace zone between about 8 minutes 30 to 7 minutes 30 per mile. And all those pace zones are based on a 1 hour 30 half marathon. A slight variation to my typical route, taking in reasonably flat terrain with one larger hill climb. I'm seeing a nice steady climb in my fitness recently over the last month or so. I've been very specific in terms of the training that I've done over the last few weeks, and I think it's a little bit down to getting some consistent runs in without any sort of breaks in sort of play due to illness and things like that. That's really eluded me over the sort of first part of the year. So how does this shoe hold up over the longer run? I did have some preconceptions about how it might be, but actually it worked out just fine. Upper-wise, I have to be honest, the shoe really isn't my favourite. The fit's kind of strange. There's just too much material there. It's just way less refined than the V1. Certainly around this toe box area, I'm getting a lot of bunching here regardless of how I tie the shoe. It just doesn't seem to lay flat across the top of my foot. Not that it really bothers me, but some people might find it very unsightly. Almost feels a little bit thicker actually than the strung material we had in the first version of the Prime X, and it didn't feel quite as breathable as before. I don't know whether they've switched up the actual design or something. That might be due to the closed-in nature of the shoe. Certainly around this sort of tongue area, it does feel quite claustrophobic. Towards the end of my run today, I did start to feel those laces digging into the very top of my foot around this area, perhaps as my feet started to swell a little bit as the miles started to go up. I remember on a 30-kilometer effort earlier in the year, I never felt any of that really with the V1 Strung. It does very much feel like the upper's a backwards step here. I perhaps wish they could have used the upper from that shoe on top of this midsole. That would have been quite interesting. It does make me wonder whether it's Adidas's attempt to keep this version of the shoe very much as a concept one, a development shoe, almost deflecting those type of comments, away from this model, like a futuristic shoe. This is what could be done with technology. Maybe we shouldn't always mess with that type of stuff though. One plus point, it is very easy to clean. This did pick up quite a lot of dirt and debris. It just brushes off just like the original version of the Prime X Strung. Midsole wise now, round about 10 miles into the run, I was thinking to myself, I wish I did have a little bit less shoe on foot. I hate to say that, as I do like the underfoot feel here in the Prime X2, but the bulk was just beginning to bug me a little bit. Just feels perhaps a little less streamlined than it did before. Certainly feels stable though, more of an impact protector rather than a very propulsive option. I perhaps don't feel like I want to go up through the gears as much in this version of the shoe. Pretty much fits into that steady pace, 8 minutes to 7:45 perhaps per mile. Feels okay on some easier, more recovery-like efforts, but you certainly feel the bulk of the shoe again with that type of pace zone. Just makes the midsole this time a little bit more of a niche option, I think. I think it's only going to make the appeal of the shoe even slimmer when you consider how much this one is at retail. I'm trying to do as many videos as I can about this shoe because there's so many questions about it. People are very hesitant to spend that type of money, especially in the current economic climate. Now, the midsole of this shoe certainly is loosening up quite a bit the more and more miles I put into it. It feels a lot more compressive, a little bit less jarring. Certainly all of the elements here are starting to become a little bit more malleable. There's just a bit more bounce to it on foot strike. I do think the carbon plate implementation in the Prime X2 is doing a little bit of an Arsene Wenger to the shoe. It's applying that handbrake. I always used to talk about that. It was very strange. Doesn't feel quite as nimble before, certainly at higher paces. The first version of the shoe felt a little bit more like it was tuned to make those sort of faster paces a bit more sustainable and achievable. Now, that could be ideal for you really if you want to run that sort of steady pace in your long runs. Perhaps if you're not going for your sort of half marathon or 10k effort during those. But I do know that lots of people like to incorporate those faster pace sections into their long runs, and perhaps I don't feel that this shoe is quite as appropriate for that anymore. The next day after the long run, the legs are feeling pretty good. It is the first longer run that I've done in a while, so I wasn't expecting miracles. Not perfect, but certainly okay enough to do some easy miles this morning. Now, does the Prime X 2.0 lower the heart rate overall? Well, yes, it certainly does. Though, is it to a lower extent than the first version of the shoe? Well, that's what I thought really, where you've got loads of excess bulk here. I think it's a good 50 grams extra weight. But when I dug into the stats, that wasn't the case. You'd think lifting 50 grams extra around on each foot, mile after mile on a long run, that it would sap the energy a bit more. Perhaps the effects of the carbon plate and the additional foam might be offset by the weight. But when I started looking at the Strava data and what I collected from my Garmin watches, well, that wasn't really the case. You can see there across similar runs in the two versions of the Prime X, it's clear that there's not actually that much difference between my performance in either shoe so far. Now, there's variables there like temperature, of course, that I can't control. They are what they are on those runs, although there wasn't that much difference. You'd assume that it's actually a bit tougher in the warmer weather we've had recently. Elevation was reasonably similar types of routes and locations. I mean, my fitness levels at the time, well, when I did some of these runs, that was where I was getting ready for marathon training. But I think I'm actually, if anything, a bit fitter now. I think the most interesting one there was the 20-mile Prime X Strung run versus the 12-mile Prime X2 run. They showed about the same heart rate average overall, but lower wattage in the Prime X2. So as I dug deeper into the results, you can see that actually there's not really a clear difference between the two. Certainly something to think about as I move forward with my testing with this shoe. Let me know in the comments if you've had some similar feelings about this shoe. Sometimes there's a bit more than meets the eye. Outsole wise, the shoe did just fine on some sort of wetter, slippery surfaces. There was a little bit of standing water there. I enjoyed running through that, to be honest. I found the grip to be consistent and very versatile, really. On both road and pavement, it's pretty much the king. The width of the landing platform certainly is going to really entice a few people to pick this one up. Much wider in the forefoot and the heel than the previous version of the shoe. I'm finding the curve actually in the forefoot section of the shoe to be far less aggressive, and certainly the improved stability back here in the heel is very welcome. I think the overall increase in rubber coverage here within the Prime X2 is certainly going to increase the durability and longevity of the midsole. I found it very reliable in terms of traction on bends and curves as well. So again, as per the initial review really of the Prime X2, I think the outsole is probably one of the best bits of the shoe. So in fairness, when you look at perceived effort, the recorded effort level, pace and heart rate, it's not a massive difference between the Prime X and the Prime X2. I'm going to endeavour to test that theory out over the coming weeks, see if it's all in my head or perhaps in the shoes or even in my legs. Whatever though, with this type of pace and the effort level put in, nice sustained heart rate throughout, it's great training for the Manchester half. Really looking forward to that event. Hopefully I can see a few of the viewers up there too. I bet there's a whole bunch of you doing that one. Let me know your thoughts on the interesting findings of the Prime X2, and also if you're going to be out there Manchester Half Marathon in October. It would be great to see you. musical interlude time. One album that's been a real favourite of mine since its release about a month ago is from Miles Kane. It's called One Man Band. Here's one track that really hits the spot though, which is Baggio. It's all about the Italian footballer and how he used to inspire Miles Kane when he was a young lad. Probably the case for me as well, really, thinking about Baggio. He always seemed like this wonderful sort of star with the interesting haircut and the incredible skills as well on the ball. Love this track, some real driving beats and some awesome guitar there. Loads of vibrato and reverb, all the things I love to have on electric guitar. Seems to have been missed by quite a few people, this album, so if you haven't checked it out yet, please go and do so. It's nice and short and sharp, no messing about. Some really memorable tracks here from Miles Kane, One Man Band. Thanks for tuning in, people, and for all your support. If you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, please do, because there's many of you out there that are watching on a regular basis who haven't subscribed yet. Give this video a thumbs up like. My name's EDDBUD, and I'll be seeing you